Greetings, everyone. Greetings, Shashank.
Greetings. How are you?
Yes, sir. I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome as always.
Yes, nice. That's good to hear. I think last week we had an interesting discussion, and that discussion kept me active for an entire week, waiting for me to get into this week's discussion as well, so that we can have
hmm
something interesting to talk about. And yeah, so I think we left off last week with Ramayana, where we discussed about Lord Parashurama and Lord Rama both meeting in the Ramayana. As we discussed, that was in the first book, Balakanda, where they meet face to
Yeah,
face. Not a well-known topic. Most people don't know that these two avatars met at the same time. They both existed at the same time, because usually the concept of avatar that we know or understand is that usually one is available and when one is done with their avatar, the next one takes form. That's a general
yeah,
understanding. But Parashurama, being a Chiranjeevi himself, that he's been available throughout.
yeah. So Parshurama is a Chiranjeevi, as everyone knows that, and he has, as after his birth, he has been appearing in multiple yugas, and it is believed that he's still alive, and he's in a remote village near the Himalayas, and he's in hiding as of now. As in, they've gotten so good at hiding that nobody can even uh, have a darshan of them without their willingness. So they've got that good. And yeah, Parshurama, as we all know, he's the son of a sage who was supposed to be a Brahmin, but he was born as a Brahmin with the qualities of a Kshatriya. So that's the reason why we saw him go rampant on so many kings that were in the path of Adharma. And at his time, it was a really great achievement for him. And he really sort of cleansed the entire world. A world as in the entire subcontinent of India, which was not a complete subcontinent at that time, of course. So yeah, that was a really great part that he took in establishing dharma over adharma. And also, many people think that Parshurama is the name that Parshuram was born with, but that's not actually true. Parshurama was actually born with the name of Rama, and then later, after so many years of meditating, so many years of calling upon Lord Shiva, he ultimately got impressed with his tapas, and then he ultimately granted the weapon of the axe, the iconic axe that we all know of, and that was the one that was used to wipe out 21 generations after uh, the king that was primarily doing adharma at his time. So yeah, the axe, which was Parashu, and his name Rama, ultimately became to be known as Parshurama, or the Ram which wielded the axe. So yeah,
That's interesting. So I believe his name initially was Rama Jamadignya,
yeah, Rama Jamadagni.
right? And that is also his father's name. The last name is that of his father, which is who's also a Saptarishi, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. It was a great lineage.
All right. So yeah, I think so. If I'm not mistaken, the meeting of Lord Rama as well as Lord Parshurama happens in the first book, Balakanda, from circa 73 to 76, where he describes about why he went on doing what he did, that is, killing the Kshatriyas and the 21 uh, generation Kshatriyas, and what was
hmm
the reason for him doing so. So all of that is mentioned in those. I think as we break down each sarga and each verse, we'll have a better understanding. First,
Yeah.
we have to set up the initial idea. Who first we'll talk about who is Parshurama. You've already provided that information. We just have to also highlight the fact that so Ramayana is a huge book with a combination of seven books in total. The seventh one
hmm
again is good, yes or no. That's a different story. But
Yeah.
within the Balakanda, there is a lot to unfold, right? And
Yeah.
this seems to be one of those things where we identified something which is not that commonly known. We just want to discuss.
hmm
So, as mentioned, Saga 73 to 76 is where we have a description of his story and what
hmm
transpires. Would you like to, explain from when did the meet, as in what happened, and post what did the meeting actually when did the meeting start and what transpired after that?
Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting story where we see two avatars of the same deity face to face, but one of them unknowing that the other person is also an avatar of the same deity. So Parshuram was aware that Rama is an avatar of Krishna or Vishnu, but Rama was particularly not aware that Parshuram was also an avatar of Krishna himself. So that's where kind of a communication gap happens, and he really meets him first. But I mean, there are multiple stories to this, but yeah, according to what I've read, Parshurama and Lord Rama first met, and they encountered in the Balakanda segment in Sarga 73 to 76. And one story goes in such a way that Parshurama met Rama at the time that there was the Swayamvar for Sita, where the famous Pinaka, the bow that was gifted by Lord Shiva to Parshurama, it was ultimately broken by Rama, and that's the first time that Rama and Parshurama encountered each other, and they sort of describe each other in such a way that Valmiki has done such a good job of describing both of them that we get a good picture that they're not having a clear picture of what their original entity is. And Parshurama also describes about why he did what he did in order to give a clear picture to Rama. So Parshurama describes that he had to do the inevitable. He had to make the hard choices that no one was willing to do, because after the death of so many countless people that was innocent at that time, so many countless people were killed at the hands of Kshatriyas, and these Kshatriyas, the advanced weaponry that they have, the advanced power that they have, and the abuse that they did of that power really pushed a nerve. It sort of broke a nerve with Parshurama, and then he went on a rampant journey of destroying 21 generations of these uh, Kshatriyas. So there's also another other narrative wherein people say that it was not technically 21 generations of Kshatriyas that he destroyed, rather it was 21 times that he wiped out the entire uh, Bharatakanda of these Kshatriyas. So it was not particularly 21 generations, as in son after son. It was 21 kings that were abusing their power, that were not really having the idea of the so-called Ram Rajya at that time. Ram Rajya only happened after the existence of Lord Rama. So it was to destroy this injustice and to bring equilibrium to the entire cosmos, as in you sort of like to have to balance the scales of nature in such a way that it's not tipped to one point. There's a delicate balance between dharma and adharma, and at that point when Parshurama had was about to go on a streak of his killing streak, his blood streak, the scales were tipping towards the point of adharma, wherein dharma was basically non-existent, and that's why he had to pick up his weapon. He had to pick up his parashu, and he had to wipe out all of these kings. So that's basically what Parshuram describes. Um, he sort of justifies his actions towards Lord Rama, and that's one version of how the story of the encounter happened.
That's interesting. I think we should at some point cover the origin story of Parshurama as well as the other person, which is Vishwamitra, equally known for his temper as well. He's one of those rishis who's also Sapta Rishi, if I'm not mistaken, who's known for his
Yeah,
temper.
yeah,
Not many people would want to annoy him,
yeah.
and his power is equally devotion. And these two are connected, and I think that somewhere we could investigate, or maybe we could dwell into those at some point. But I want to point out one thing. So when I first read Valmiki's Ramayana, when I read the verses, especially which spoke about how Parshurama appeared, the
Mhm,
first time when I read this
mhm,
was really interesting. It was so interesting, and I'm not the person who gets interested at reading books at some point, not my style. But when I read
mhm.
this part of the discussion, I was wondering why haven't they made a movie about it yet? Like it seemed to
Exactly.
me. Yeah, I mean, this is one of. I don't know if this is an introduction to a horror movie or a superhero movie or what, but the way they describe things, the way they put this one, it should have been a movie, right? So I'll just start with
Exactly.
the statement. So King Dasharatha, he's also known in the Valmiki Ramayana. He's known as Tiger among men, right? And Lord Rama is called again lion amongst men. So this is a term they usually use: bull amongst men, tiger amongst men, in the English translation that I refer to.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
we have the tiger amongst men who inquires Vashishta when he sees that he feels that something is not going right because the birds were circling, the animals were circling them, and bad
Hmm.
omens were there. And now the question arises. He asks, the birds are savage and dreadful. He's talking to Vashishta, and he asks the question,
Hmm.
and he keeps asking about what is going to happen, and he has bad feeling. So Vashishta, who's again Saptarishi, he said the birds are savage and dreadful, and
Hmm.
yeah, they do say that something evil is about to happen, but the animals, on the other hand, they're telling you that evil will be averted. Whatever evil is about to happen, it will be averted, which means there is no need for concern,
Yeah.
right? Even though he says that, the description that they talk about, like how the place is, right, it they keep telling how it becomes dark, the entire place becomes dark, and
Hmm.
everyone except the sages, the seers, the King
Hmm.
Dasharatha, Lord Rama,
Hmm.
and Lakshmana, everyone
Hmm.
else becomes, they are stunned, they're stupefied in a way, and they all fall down and lose their senses, except for these people, they all lose consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about how darkness covers and all the direction, all the cardinal directions, there is no light. And again, this is the introduction of Parshurama when he appears.
Hmm.
This is the way they describe, like, it's not just some random person coming to me. But when they describe his entry, they're talking about how, if even the king, who's King Dashratha, who's the king of everything,
Hmm.
he feels fear and he knows something is not right. Then they say what the problem is. They say this is not some random, instance. This seems to be Rama Jamadagna's entrance. Like they say, this is a person who's going to show up, and that's where something like that is going to bound to happen. And also describe that him holding an axe on his shoulder, carrying a very good looking, an elegant bow and an arrow in his other hand, and he's walking. And there's also another description, which is one of my favorites, by the way. Even though Parashurama is an avatar of Lord Vishnu, there is a description which matches very much Lord Shiva like. For example, I think it's in verse 16 to 22, the statement goes
Hmm.
that he looks so dreadful that it is not for everyone to look at, and he looks unassailable like Mount Kailasha itself. And like the fire of universal destruction, he appears with coil and matted hair. And as he walks towards it, people start feeling like, uneasy. Like in the shadows, talking about the dark, and the entire army is covered with ashes, and he walks just a silhouette walking towards, towards them with matted hair and the coil and everything. Like, why is this not a movie?
Exactly. The aura that that person carries, it's enough to make an entire movie all by himself.
Yes, sir. This was one of the interesting ones, and that's what I was wondering. So, if in case, like, we spoke about, we spoke about his personality and what kind of person he is, and his attributes and everything. He seems to be a violent person, right?
Yeah.
And I think once we discuss more into his origin, like his birth and everything, we would understand better. But
Hmm.
would you want to give a highlight, just a glimpse of what is the origin story? I think that's something which we don't want to cover today, but even for the future, let's just dwell into it and see what is that we could cover.
Yeah, let's just do it sort of like in a brief manner, so that we have an introduction, and then we can just dive in depth in another podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So the origin story of Parshurama, or his father, Jamadagni, as we all know. Jamadagni is a great rishi. He's a very learned man, and he's an extremely proficient sage, and he is one of the Sapta rishis. So Jamadagni has two wives. According to the Puranas, he has two wives, and he has a total of four children. And yeah, again, this may vary depending on where you read this information, but yeah, let's move forward. He has two wives, and he is having intentions with those wives wherein he wants children with particular qualities, and he has prepared potions for them. Jamadagni, being the learned sage that he has prepared specific potions for each of his wives. The speciality of these two wives are, one wife is a kshatriya and one wife is a brahmin, and he wants a brahmin child from the brahmin wife, and he wants a kshatriya child from the kshatriya wife. So this happens, and he draws out two portions. He constructs two portions wherein each portion has specific qualities of each child. As in, if the wives were to drink these two portions, those wives were to carry this child with those specific qualities that Jamadagni specifically wanted for that particular child. So, during a mix up, as in there are many versions to the story wherein those wives intentionally mix up the potions just to try. And there's one more story wherein there's an unfortunate mix up with the potions. So, what happens is that due to this mix-up, the potion that was carrying the qualities of the Brahman is ultimately consumed by the Kshatriya wife, and the portion that was carrying the Kshatriya content, the Kshatriya qualities, it was consumed by the Brahmin wife. So, you see this crisscross happening with this, and due to this, two children were born. One is Rama, whom we know as Parshurama today, and one is Vishwamitra, who is the great sage, famous for his temper and for his knowledge. So, Vishwamitra, born with the body of a Kshatriya, but with the qualities of a Brahmin. But Rama, Parshurama, born with the body of a Brahmin, but the qualities of a Kshatriya. So, this mix up happened, and this sort of enraged Jamadagni to one point, but then there wasn't really anything that could be done as of now. So Parshurama grew up to be a Brahmin. He grew up with the lifestyle of a Brahmin because he was born with the broad body of a Brahmin, but only with the qualities of Kshatriya. And also Vishwamitra, being a Kshatriya, but also having the qualities of a Brahmin, he also chose to grow up as a Brahmin, and both of them learned the Vedas, learned all of the knowledge that was there together, and ultimately after the king, a bit shady with the king's name. I think it was Kartiviri Arjun that was the king at that time, at Parshurama's time, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, I think it's
Yep. The one who killed his
Kartiviri
father,
Arjun.
right?
Yeah, Kartiviri Arjun abused his power. He was drunk with his power, and at one point he started killing innocent people for no reason at all. And when this happened, Parshurama saw the innocent being killed at the mercy of this particular abusive king, and that's when he lost it. When his father died, that's when he lost it. And then the story goes that Parshurama went on to meditate for so many years, and then after being impressed by his meditation, Shiva ultimately granted him the axe, the Parashu that we now famously know of. And then he used that Parashu to wipe out 21 generations of kings, or it may be another version of the story wherein it was 21 separate kings, Kshatriya kings, that were wiped out, who are drunk with their power, who are abusing their power. So, this is how the entire origin story goes.
Nice, interesting. So yeah, I think we could go in detail. Sometime we could maybe in the future we could discuss that in detail and explain more about the people and the names that were involved in this, because essentially how Hinduism is based is nothing happens without a reason. It's all part of a bigger picture. And if you look at entire Avatar and all the I think we had this discussion last time as well, right? Which is even
Yeah.
when Ganesha's head was chopped off, or where the
Hmm.
head came from, and
Hmm.
who was that the crocodile that attacked the king of elephants. All of those were
Yeah.
connected though, each one tied to another story, which tied to another story, and one action would solve multiple consequences, kind of the way
Yeah.
how it was provided to us. So based on this, again, nothing was meant to happen by accident. This clears a lot of things. I think once we get into it, we should discuss more on those things.
Yeah.
And now for Parshurama's demeanor, like let's just talk about the way the way when once he appeared,
Hmm.
there was this understanding. I think someone once mentioned that Lord Rama was challenged, and so the entire thing was about a challenge, right? But he
Yeah.
initially was hesitant, but later he took over the challenge. The one which I read, he wasn't hesitant. It was actually his father who was hesitant, King Dashratha. He was hesitant. He didn't want them to fight because he thought Parshurama is him being for his reputation that he's known for, and
Mm-hmm.
killing all Kshatriyas. That he was worried, and that his little boys, both of them were at this point were 16 years of old,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Rama and Lakshmana. So he was worried that Lord Parshurama could do the damage, but
Mm-hmm.
Lord Rama, on the other hand, had different viewpoint, right? So
Mm-hmm.
initially, I think the sages would all gather when Parashurama was appearing, and then they would ask, surely he's not trying to slaughter the Kshatriyas again, because his anger has gone. His anger and grief, which was by Kartivirya Arjuna, who killed
Yeah.
his father, was
Mm-hmm.
gone after he took out his revenge. Which is why
Yeah.
he gave up whatever he was doing, and then he left for Mount Mantara. From not Mantara. What is the mountain called?
It's somewhere in
Mahendra.
the Himalayas. Yeah,
Yeah,
Mount Mahendra.
Mount Mahendra. So yeah, he goes to
Yeah.
Mount Mahendra because his job was done. Essentially, he felt his job was done. So now,
Yeah.
during King Dasharatha's duration or his time of being a king, things were
Mm-hmm.
going good. One of the golden
Yeah.
ages, to be precise, right? So there's no
Yeah.
need for him to come and kill the Kshatriyas again.
Mm-hmm.
But the fear still lingers. When they look at him, they know what is about to do. So this
Yeah.
happens. He walks up to Lord Rama, and then he says, "I've heard about all the extraordinary things that you broke the bow, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see that myself, and I wanted to see if here's my bow. By the way, this is the
Mm-hmm.
challenge that he's giving Lord Rama. Here's my bow,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
take this bow and see if you can knock an arrow. If you're able to knock an arrow, then we
Mm-hmm.
both have a single combat, a strength combat, right? A
Yeah.
single combat, and then we will see what this combat is all about." And he also says, "This is the combat. If you are having combat with me, that is what men will praise you for the might, because this is
Mm-hmm.
having a battle with Lord Parshurama is something that men would, praise people for. Anyone who's part of it, because I don't issue, challenges to everyone,
Yeah.
correct? Because the bow was not a normal bow, as you mentioned initially. There was a bow of Lord Shiva,
Yeah.
right? So he
Yeah.
talks about this, and now the version where King Dashrath again, he talks about his feelings as a father. He says, like, what, these are just my little kids, don't hurt them, and he goes in an emotional mode. But
Mm-hmm.
Parashurama ignores him completely, and then he still talks to Lord Rama, and then he asks about the challenge again. And this is where the fun happens, right? Lord Rama does not hesitate. He just takes the bow and he says, what, don't think me of any weakling of sorts. I may be 16 years old, but I can
Mm-hmm.
still battle, right? So that's something was
Yeah.
surprising, because when I heard two different versions of the story, and I heard when Lord Rama says, like, no, I can take you out on a battle, right? What was running in his mind? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think was the discussion all about, though?
Rama being the sort of like the ideal character that everyone looks out for. I think his mindset was sort of in a calm way, wherein he just saw a curious man, a great curious man who was just wanting to test his strength. Because, of course, like you mentioned, it was not any ordinary bow that Ram broke in order to win over Sita. The Pinaka was a great bow which eventually had to be broken because it was a weapon of Lord Shiva and it was destined to be broken. And it was also destined to be broken by a great man who's capable enough on his own. So Rama just saw him as a curious man, as in it was a bow that it was previously wielded by Parshurama, and then it was gifted to King Janak at one point of time. So a curious man just wanting to test the strength of another man who just broke a pretty significant bow, who most of them couldn't even lift, more or less just break it all throughout. People could not even lift or touch that bow. You would require a great sort of strength, a mental strength, a physical strength, in order to be even able to come close to that bow. And such a great weapon was just broken by an adolescent person who's just in his growing years. And that's how Lord Rama saw it. For his age, he was incredibly mature, and
Hmm.
upholding
So
dharma. Yeah.
you go ahead. Sorry, I thought you were quiet for a second. My bad.
Oh, no, no. You go ahead. I'm done.
Yeah. So speaking of the bow, you mentioned about the bows. Those are not like regular bows. We're talking about two bows which were crafted for specific people, right?
Yeah.
Vishwakarma, who was the god of craft, who created two divine bows. One was given to Lord
Hmm.
Vishnu, and one was given to Lord Shiva.
Hmm.
Actually, the first one was given to Lord Shiva, and then was given to Lord Vishnu, because
Yeah.
at this point, Shiva had something to do with that bow. That bow was supposed to, that bow was created for a purpose for Lord Shiva, right? If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, there was a battle, and he had to destroy one of those. Is it the floating, the
Yeah.
floating three planets?
The
Yes.
Trilokas that were ruled by demons, they were consistently coming out of that city and raiding the other worlds. So these were essentially floating worlds at that time, and you can also see the advancement. They can either be freaks of nature, as in the floating islands or the floating worlds. They can either be islands that were floating due to some gravitational anomaly. This is one way of looking at it, or they're just straight up from a magical sci-fi book, Floating Islands, and
Or could be
they were
planets or
demons.
moons. Could it
I
be like
think
a one of the, most planets have multiple moons, right? Earth has one moon,
yeah,
but there are other planets have
yeah.
multiple moons too. Could they be referring to one of those moons that were floating around the sun, sorry, around the Earth? Is it possible?
As in, it can be a moon, but there were three lokas, right? Three worlds. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily physical planets that we're talking about. They might be dimensions from where the demons crawled out of, and they were regularly raiding the cities of the devas. And that's one way of looking at it. Lokas does not necessarily mean planets or satellites revolving around a particular planet. It can also be looked at as different dimensions, and one such one such thing that points out that may signify that these are actual planets that we're talking about. It's the fact that Shiva had to wait until all of these three lokas aligned in a proper line, and it signifies an event that even today we come across as eclipses, as in the sun, the moon, and the earth. All three of them, when they line together, they form an eclipse, and that's one way of looking at it. This is not a scientific anomaly; it's just the way that rotation of planets work.
In other
So,
words, what I'm saying is he had to wait for the alignment, the orbital alignment to happen for him to take, because
yeah,
there is a specific rule. All three should have to be aligned in one direction, and one single
yeah,
arrow should destroy it. Is the argument, or is the deal they made, more or less. And so
yeah.
it talks about an orbital alignment where all of them had to align in a way for it to happen.
Hmm.
So in a way,
Yeah,
yeah, these do seem like celestial bodies, right? Even though they
yeah.
say cities, it kind of feels like a celestial, because even if it's, let's just say there is some kind of let's go sci-fi over here. Let's just say there are
Hmm.
floating cities, apparently, right?
Hmm.
They don't
Hmm.
have, I don't see a reason why they have to be aligned, or they have to wait for it to be aligned, because of the, those can be manually done as well, or
Yeah.
wait for a good time. But unless it's a celestial, orbit which is involved, then they
Hmm.
could potentially wait for it. Again, we don't know. We can only speculate at this point. But I'm just
Hmm.
saying, at this point, I would lean towards that more, because of what we have currently seen. Sometimes we do wait for planets to align, and
Yeah.
that sounds somewhat close enough, though.
Yeah. So the story goes that the three lokas, the Tripura is the actual name for those lokas. The Tripura, it was a host to all of these demons that were raiding the Devalokas, and Shiva had to use Mount Meru. Mount Meru is the basic foundation that's holding together these 14 lokas. That's also one way of looking at it, right? Mount There's mention of Mount Meru in the Puranas, wherein Shiva had to use that as a bow, signifying Pinaka. There's one version where Shiva uses the Pinaka, and there's one version where Shiva uses the Pinaka and just set on Mount Meru as a base, and he uses a bow. He uses a bow and arrow, the Pinaka, to destroy the Tripura, the three cities, or the three lokas, or the three planets. So this
Hmm.
is the significance of Pinaka, and that's after that purpose was solved. That was the main purpose of Pinaka, And once that purpose was solved, Shiva ultimately gave it to Parshurama, and then it was passed on from Parshurama to Lord Janak, King Janak. And then
No,
since
sorry,
the
once again, I think it wasn't passed down to Parashurama. The Shiva's bow wasn't because Parashurama had Vishnu's bow.
is it? I think I
Yeah,
read it
so
differently.
here's my understanding, right? So there is this battle between once both the bows were in place. I
Hmm.
think all of them wanted to know which bow was more powerful. So Shiva and
Hmm.
Vishnu had a battle, right? And
Hmm.
Vishnu, by saying the syllable hum,
Hmm.
unstrung the powerful weapon of Shiva, right? And
Okay.
the weapon was so powerful it almost paralyzed him, is the understanding. And once
Hmm.
this happens, Shiva was still angry because Rudra was still angry at this point because he understood that he lost, but he was angry with not winning at this point. So what he does is he
Hmm.
gives a bow and arrow to Devarata, the seer Devarata of
Hmm.
Vaideha,
Hmm.
and that's how Janaka gets hung because Vaideha is where Janaka's kingdom is, and from
Hmm.
seer Devarata, he gives a bow and arrow to seer Devarata,
I see.
right?
Okay.
And now that he's given that bow, and
Hmm.
that's when again this is again described by Parashurama, I think from
Hmm.
17 uh, Saga 74, chapter 17 and verse 22.
I
Let me
see.
just,
Okay.
yeah, it puts over, and it talks about the weapon, and he also mentioned the
Hmm.
Vishnu's bow, which is a conqueror of enemy citadel. Vishnu gave it
Hmm.
a sacred trust to Bhargava sage of Richika, and the mighty
Hmm.
Richika gave the divine bow to his son, who happens to be Jamadagni, which is the father of Parashurama, and from his father Parashurama got that Vishnu's bow.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but both of them were made by Vishwakarma, right?
Correct. Both of them were made by Vishwakarma, and both of them were powerful. Uh, yeah, in this story, at least in this way, Vishnu,
Hmm.
by uttering the word hum, was able to unstrung the bow, right?
Yeah.
So the in another way of looking at this, we know at this point most people also say the word om or hum or om, like with
Yeah.
aum, see, is the first word which was made, or which first sound which was made, and the power of that is immense, is what other scriptures say as well. I've read this in several places, and they also say the a and o and m all have a different meaning, and because the R
Yeah.
sound is the first sound any being would make, right?
Yeah.
There is no other
Exactly.
sound that can come without R, right? And by Vishnu just saying that word that he unstrings it, that also pushes some idea towards that particular sound, like how important that is in the Hindu religion, like in the Hindu history, how important is the sound or syllable home or om or hum or om is
Yeah.
relevant.
Yeah, exactly. The speciality of this particular arrangement of letters of pronunciation of these words, u, and ma, om, it creates a particular type of vibration which really strikes the string of the universe. As in, it's not so simple as you're just producing these words out of your vocal cord. It is a fundamental word for the entire nature, wherein it signifies the purity and it signifies the significance. The significance of this entire word all the way goes back to Brahma and Vishnu and Mahesh. So yeah, this is the entire narrative of the Om word, wherein basically any ritual that you have to do, it's mandatory that you have to invoke this word, and in order to invoke any deity, Om is required. So yeah, that's the significance.
Nice. So that's again in within these sargas, right? With this again, we're talking about something within Ramayana, and within a
Yeah.
couple of verses, there's so many stories that were told. One, we call the
Mhm.
story of Parashurama. We call the story of why Parashurama was doing what he was doing. Because where Parashurama got his bow from, and he
Mhm.
speaks about the bow that what Lord Rama destroyed as well. He speaks about the battle between Vishnu and Shiva. He speaks about
Mhm.
the lineage. Like, imagine just a couple of verses gives so much
Mhm.
information. Like, remember we had a discussion that people, when we don't know Sanskrit, there's a lot of
Yeah.
knowledge that could be hidden and you could lose it. With the
Yeah.
translation, the English translation, with less than you know a few paragraphs. There's so much information which we could just get from. Imagine the actual information from Sanskrit that we discussed the other day. How much could have been lost if these are not properly translated?
Exactly. Yeah, the fact that we're not learning Sanskrit just means that we're losing knowledge on a daily basis, and so much can be gained by just learning the language. And the translations that we get nowadays, it can be manipulated in all sorts of ways, and all sorts of propaganda can be pushed through those translations. It's important that everyone learns Sanskrit so that we can just translate it on our own.
Exactly, because I have read different versions of Bhagavad Gita, right? Uh,
Yeah,
Sometimes you see there's a difference in the way people say it, because even when you say things such as pray, right, or faith,
yeah.
they could have multiple. Even the word sun, they could have multiple meaning. Even the word light could have multiple in terms of interpretation. You could have, for example, even in this particular, I'm using a Goldman's translation, which is again considered to be one of the standards, right, in
Hmm.
Western standards. But people still don't accept him as well as a proper. They still say like there is no one who's close enough to actual translation. The closest we have is probably Gita Press. That's the closest we may have. Other than that,
Yeah.
there is no translation which is close enough to the original, is what most scholars would say. And I've seen people, again, these are not just regular people. We're talking about people who are scholars who have done their own research in Ramayana, like
Hmm.
Dr. Agarwal or Ami Ganatra, several of the people, right? They talk about these books. They said there is no proper translation that we could rely on, and the Western translations, even though for most people we do rely on those, they may not be fully accurate as well. That's another problem we have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. The whole westernization of India just took a toll, and because people feel that being Americanized is a cool thing, we lose so much of knowledge because they think that speaking English is everything. Even though we are speaking in English right now, it's due to solving a purpose that we're doing that. But people in India mainly, they think that being American is cool, but they don't really realize that how cool our own culture is. That's a drawback.
I agree. I agree. So, so at this point, we've covered two important things regarding the challenge and regarding the stories that we covered, the challenge as
Yeah.
well. And now I just want to also discuss about the what is this again? This is not just a regular challenge between two people with high testosterone of sorts, right? This is something more, and the challenge
Hmm.
also has a reason.
Yeah.
So over here, if I'm not mistaken, Saga 75, the discussion goes on, and I think sorry, 74, 75 discussion goes on, and Lord Parashurama says, "Here is the bow. Take my bow and knock the arrow, and show me your strength, and uh,
Yeah.
and then I will challenge you in single combat." And when he says that, this is where it was
Hmm.
interesting for me. Lord Rama, this is remember we had a
Hmm.
discussion. How is Vishwamitra related to Parashurama? This is also something which has been hinted. So over here,
Yeah.
what Lord Rama says is uh, that I don't want to, I don't want to, lead. I don't want to release the arrow on you or at you. The reason because
Hmm.
I have respect for. I owe you a reverence as well as I Brahman as well as for sake of Vishwamitra. I'm not going to be doing that.
Hmm.
However,
Yeah.
once this arrow has been knocked, once it's made ready, it has to destroy
Hmm.
something because this particular arrow we're talking about, right? That is
Yeah.
Vishnu's bow. The arrow never
Hmm.
flies in vain, which means either I'll have to destroy you
Hmm.
or your retreat. In this again, the term retreat they mention it over here as retreat, which resembles his location, as in his place where he had been to Mount. What's the place called? Mount Mandara? No, Mahadeva,
Mahendra.
right? Mahendra. Sorry,
Mahendra.
my bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mount Mahendra, which is the term
Hmm.
as retreat over here. Either I have
Yeah.
destroyed that, or I'll have to destroy the countless universes you created through your austerities. Now the question arises: what does he mean that you created countless universes or worlds, or not universes, the countless worlds you created? Then I was just reading another part of a Purana. There is
Hmm.
this story of Trishanku and Vishwamitra again, right?
Yeah.
Vishwamitra too has created universes or worlds with his austerities. He had when Vishwamitra blessed Trishanku to go to heaven, but Indra didn't want him in heaven, and he was pushed back. He created a different
Hmm.
universe in between to to host Trishanku. So
Yeah.
over here, we're talking about creating universe, creating worlds. What is your understanding on this? What are they referring to? Do these sages have the power? They're Saptarishis, by the way. Do they have the
Mhm.
power to create worlds or universes or planets or cities?
Yeah, definitely. These stages that we're talking about, they're just not normal stages. They possess the knowledge of the entire universe. The entire universe, as in right from its creation, from the essence of Lord Vishnu or Mahavishnu, all the way towards its destruction at the end of Kali Yuga or at the end of Brahma's life cycle. They possess the entire knowledge for that. That's the reason why they're called as the Saptarushi, in order to their purpose is to guide humankind into a better path, and whenever it gets lost, they're just supposed to step in and they're supposed to guide us. Now that we got that out of the way, Vishwamitra and his immense knowledge about the Vedas, the Upanishads, and the secrets of the universe, it's not as simple as he knows a bunch of mantras and he knows when and where to use them. It's not as simple as that. He's a man who has attained moksha, and he's a man who has attained a sort of a demigod status, I would say. Not a complete god, because that would be not correct. Sort of a demigod status wherein he has the power to destroy and create everything. We can also interpret it in such a way that they possess such immense knowledge about weapons, about vimanas. There is also mention of vimanas, like we discussed in an earlier podcast. Weapons, vimanas. There's mention of so much of advanced scientific technology, wherein it almost seems like to us, since we are so primitive, it seems like magic to us. We see movies wherein they show weapons. They're just shiny, sparkly weapons that just hit each other and they get vaporized. That's how we view them, as in we view them as magical creatures, but it might not be as complicated as that. It might be as simple as they just use science that's far more advanced than us, that's even far more than what we can comprehend by our human brain. So I think that they possessed an ancient knowledge about the creation of the universe, wherein Vishwamitra was just able to sort of create his own miniature universe, not to the life size as what we have right now, but to another dimension. Not particularly saying that, indicating that he created another mini universe, like quantum universe within this entire Earth, or he might have just created another dimension for himself, where he decided to grant a boon for Trishanku, and the whole story unfolded, wherein Vishwamitra was impressed by the deeds of Trishanku, just to put it shortly, and then he granted his boon by carrying him to his own heaven that Vishwamitra created. So that's how the whole story goes. And to conclude
Yes.
this, I don't think that he particularly created an entire world by himself. He might have created another dimension, sort of like a pocket dimension. There's also mention of a pocket dimension in scientific terms, a pocket black hole, a pocket dimension. That might be what they might be indicating towards.
Okay. So, yeah. So once we discuss about once this particular discussion takes place, right? We are obviously have to go to the next saga. I think this is the final one where you have the actual story which concludes Parashurama and Lord Rama's meet, at least for now.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
before we go to that, there's still some ongoing things which I want to discuss. There is descriptions of certain beings, right? Same in circa
Mhm.
75. So
Mhm.
once Lord Rama knocks the arrow and is ready to release the arrow, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
all the gods appear, right? And all the seers appear, and Brahma also appears, and they all
Yeah.
stand there to witness the what they're looking over here is something which is beautiful, magnificent, something of that sort. They all came to
Yeah.
witness what Lord Rama is doing. So essentially,
Yeah.
uh, Lord Rama is establishing his position of who he
Mm-hmm.
is, right? And this is a display. And when he's displaying his power and his abilities, everyone shows up to watch it live,
Mm-hmm.
to pay the respects, to watch it live, to see what's happening. And they mentioned about
Yeah.
the people and the species which were involved over here. The Gandharvas
Mm-hmm.
were there, the
Mm-hmm.
Apsaras were there, someone called the
Mm-hmm.
perfected beings were there, celestial
Mm-hmm.
bards were there, the Kinnaras were there, the
Mm-hmm.
Yakshas were there, the Rakshasas were there, the great serpents had come. So there are different mentions of. I know what a Rakshasa is. I know the Asuras, and I'm aware of the Apsaras as well as the Gandharvas. The
Mm-hmm.
Kinnaras, like that's and Kinnaras and Yakshas, are the two types of beings I'm not familiar with. What
Yeah.
is a Kinnara?
So I think, in my opinion, a kinara, it means unison between a male and a female, as in what we call as kinnars today. That's one way of putting it. Kinara meaning the unison between a male and a female, and that is mentioning in a godly manner, as in from another dimension they might have come to visit them. So that's one way of putting that. And also yakshas, they're mythological beings. They're sort of like dwarfs. And I think we all know the famous yaksha. Many people might not know that this is a yaksha. Kuber, the person who is famously known for
Oh
his
yeah.
wealth, his unwavering wealth. Yeah, he's a
Mhm.
yaksha. Many people might not know of this, but he's the most famous yaksha amongst people, and people even worship Kuber and treat him as a god. So yakshas are sort of, uh, how do I put this? Mischievous
Demigod?
beings. They are sort of demigods, but not completely. Not to the status of Lord Indra or Surya Dev. These are demigods. Indra, Surya Dev, Varun Dev, Vayu Dev. These are demigods. But yakshas are not complete demigods. They are from another dimension, and they're sort of mischievous beings. They all of their senses are heightened. It's described as though their senses are always heightened, and some of them even contain murderous intents, as in they sometimes taunt human beings and sometimes taunt the lower species or not as evolved as them, spiritually evolved speaking, of course. So
Mhm.
yeah, and also Kuber, the famous yaksha, he also had a kingdom before Ravana. He ruled Lanka, and then Ravana. We all know how Ravana just sort of threw him out of his own kingdom, and he stole his Vimana as well. The Pushpak Viman, the famous Pushpak Viman that was used by Ravana all throughout Ramayana, that originally belonged to Kuber as well. Yeah. So yeah, these are just brief description of these beings.
Nice. Right, so yeah, the mention of different species, different kinds of people, or different kinds of divine entities showed up over here, and they
Yeah.
all came in to see that view of Lord Rama,
Hmm.
using that bow of Vishnu, essentially solidifying or signifying that I am an avatar of Vishnu, right?
Yeah.
In the most beautiful way. I think the way again, the book, the way it describes, I would ask this question again: why is it still not a movie, right? That's when I read these things. That's a question that comes to my mind. I mean, we've had movies, and we at least at this point we see some movies which go back to these religious concepts. I grew up watching a lot of movies of these religious movies back in time. If I'm not mistaken,
Mhm.
South Indians had these movies, and they used to dub in different languages as well. I watched a lot of Telugu movies which were
Yeah.
dubbed in different languages, right? And those at those days they covered religious concepts. A lot of religious movies were made, right? And
Yeah.
things were some in the
Ex-
80s, some in the 80s, like 70s and 80s, and then
Yeah.
it died altogether. No one paid attention to those things anymore. Recently I've noticed a couple of movies which are trying to bring things in, but then the graphics is messed up, right? And the content, it's pretty bad. There is no substance to any of these movies. I watched this movie called Adi Purush, and I was
Yeah.
wondering, wait, I like Ramayana, and I didn't like that movie. It was actually making me angry for some reason. Like,
Let's
why
let's not
is
call that a movie.
Why are the graphics so bad? I mean, come on, like, what is happening? It's like
I
watching
mean,
some
the entire
serial from
description,
60s.
yeah, the entire description of the characters itself was fundamentally wrong. And let's not even call it a movie. That's straight up an insult to the original Ramayana that they so-called based it upon. So yeah, oh,
Yeah, so
that's
I think there is potential to make these movies, and there's another problem as well. For example, this is
Mhm.
something which most people or most religions will also face. Sometimes making these movies, it also hurts some sentiments. People are also offended by it. If they're not portrayed in a certain way, people get offended, which
yeah.
makes sense. People don't take the risk of doing it. So by not touching it, they're also making such stories forgettable as well. So I think both sides will have to come to a middle ground, like, make movies but not insulting, right? And
Yeah,
stick to it as close as possible. And if something is true to the scriptures, and even if you don't like it, accept, because that is the scripture. If you're not liking it, that's a scripture. You have to deal with it.
yeah.
So that those the understanding someone would have to, people would also have to agree to it. And I hope that we have, people making these kind of movies so they can spread these messages even better.
I mean, hope so. That would be good if we get some of these movies.
Yes, sir. And so, going back to this, this verse. So
Yeah.
here I see that the way when Lord Rama stood with the bow,
Hmm.
Parashurama was stunned. He kind of felt his energy is being, taken away from him, or sapped, strength sapped by the lotus eyed Rama, right? And
Hmm.
he sees that, okay, that his true power was witnessed, where he sees, okay,
Hmm.
who this person is. And he says that, and he tells Lord Rama, long ago I gave the earth to Kashyapa. Kashyapa happens to be Parashurama's teacher, right? So, and he
Yeah.
told me that you may not stay in my realm. So now this again the discussion: either I have destroyed the mountain, or I have destroyed your worlds. So
Hmm.
Parashurama says, so I would like to go back to Mount Mahendra. So, but you should release the arrow and destroy the worlds that I created. And
Oh. Yeah.
when he says that, because he wants to go back to the Mount Mahendra, and he wants to reside there, just like he promised his master or his teacher. So he wants to go there, and he agrees to it. And then with the great bow that Rama, he also mentioned that you could destroy incomparable worlds, right? The ones you create, you can destroy
Sure.
all of them. There is no stop what
Mhm.
the bow can do. The way you handle
Yeah.
the bow, that itself is where he was impressed. The way you handle the bow, I know that you are
Hmm.
Vishnu, Lord of gods, and
Hmm.
the slayer of Madhu, and there is no confusion over here, right? And he
Yeah.
he accepts his defeat at this point. He accepts his defeat, saying that we both, even though we both know that he is the avatar of Vishnu, both of them are avatar of Vishnu. Vishnu's
Hmm.
Vishnu's better avatar, or the most significant avatar of that point of time, happens to be Lord Rama, and Parashurama takes a step back to give him that position, what he's rightfully what he is here for, Lord Rama, right? So it is not. I'm
Hmm.
not taking this again. This is my interpretation. I'm not taking this as a defeat or a win, because it's both played by the same entity, right? So one is
Yeah.
just letting another person shine at this point, because their time was done and this is your time to take over, kind of thing, right? But
Yeah.
this also
Exactly.
plays a significant role in a way they have to describe Lord Rama, because everyone was present and they had an intention to prove that Lord Rama, unlike other avatars, has would have more importance in the shaping of the future, the upcoming futures, whatever that is there for. What do you say?
Yeah. Exactly. I do completely agree with that. We do all know the famous story of how Rama governed his entire kingdom, and the famous Ram Rajya term came from there itself. And Parshurama, at one point, he agreed that Rama is going to be having a much more impactful role in defeating a bigger evil. Of course, Parshurama had a big role in wiping out the evil from his entire world, but Rama defeating Ravana is going to be celebrated more. I'm not comparing here. I'm not picking hairs here, but people celebrate Dashera because Rama defeated Ravana at the end of the day, and Parshurama kind of knew the significance of what of the role of Rama in establishing dharma against adharma, and also he also knew that people are gonna revert his name centuries to come, not even centuries, yugas to come. So I think that's where Parshurama, he did not sort of give up on the fight, or he did not accept defeat. He just admitted that okay, you are a good man. The world is going to be in safe hands, and then he just kind of retreated into his own realm. So that's how I look at it.
Precisely, because there's no need for Parashurama to be there because his whole agenda is to destroy evil Kshatriyas, and Lord Rama is
Yeah,
the one who came to restore Dharma, more Dharma than Parashurama could or any other previous incarnations have, right? So he is
yeah,
the person who pretty much followed Dharma till the end, even though he lost his own kingdom, he had to go 14 year of exile and all this thing, but Dharma was upheld. So he understood.
yeah,
Obviously, he would have known what would have transpired in in the upcoming future as well. But he understood what Lord Rama was, and there was no need for Parashurama to be there because Dharma will be upheld in Ram Rajya. In other words, right?
yeah.
So
For
he,
that time being, yeah. So sorry. Yeah, for that time being, Parshuram's purpose was fulfilled. But then he also knew that his purpose was not completely filled, as he has to come back again as the guru of Kalki, in order to defeat Kali. So yeah, for that time being, he was aware that his role is done for now.
correct. And now you mentioned an interesting point. Yeah, he becomes a teacher of Kalki. That's interesting. We know that's about to happen. I've also heard a story that Lord Parshurama and Bhishma had a battle. Now I haven't fully, investigated that or invest time in looking into it. I hopefully someday I get time to do that. But I heard that Bhishma and Parashurama had a battle, and Bhishma won the battle. Have you heard of this by any chance?
Yeah.
Right?
You just got cut out there in the last bit.
Sorry. Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, you just got cut out there in the last bit.
Okay. No, I've just heard the story where Lord Parashurama and Bhishma had a battle, and Bhishma won the battle. I'm yet to find that out or read the scriptures, but I came across this and I was like surprised, like what? When did this happen? I was under the impression post Ramayana, Parashurama appears in the. I know he appears in Mahabharata because he teaches Karna as well. He's a teacher for Karna too, but I never knew there was a battle between Bhishma and Parashurama. Seems like we have a technical issue of sorts. All right. So yeah, uh, if you're able to hear me, yeah, you can join. I mean, I'll just quickly go through some other points in terms of Parashurama as well as Lord Rama's divine nature. So when we discussed earlier, we spoke about where he was about to release the arrow. So this is when Parashurama says that once you release the arrow, I will go back to the mountain. And after saying that, Lord Rama releases the arrow, and at once all the cardinal as well as the intermediate directions were freed from darkness, and all the ash which was surrounded also disappears. And Rama still holding the bow, and all the gods were praising Lord Rama, saying that how good he was doing what he was doing. And then Lord Rama says to King Dasharatha that Parashurama is gone.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me? But if there's a connectivity issue, you can leave and join, see if that helps.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah. Now it's better.
Okay. So yeah, looks like this connectivity issue, I guess. Yeah, I was just talking about
Yeah.
while you were out, I was just talking about Parashurama saying that if at all, once you release the arrow, I will leave. and Lord Rama releases the arrow in all cardinal directions, and the darkness around him disappears. And he looks at his father and says that Parashurama is gone, and that makes him happy. King Dasharatha was
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Exactly. That was an interesting encounter wherein Dashratha felt nervous for Rama, but Rama remained, sort of calm, and he just ended up facing Parshurama.
Exactly. So he never had that kind of fear in terms of how to, you know, that he's having a battle with someone because he understood his position that he is a supreme being. So
Yeah.
he took that battle head on, and he proved his worthy and his worth. Sorry, and since he was worthy of the bow, and once all was done, and this is an interesting part. Again, speaking of the bow, once Lord Rama left, and
Hmm.
Parashurama gave the bow which he was having, the bow of Vishnu, to Varuna, god of
Hmm.
water, right?
Yeah.
And that's the end of it. I couldn't find anything after what Varuna did with that bow.
Yeah, that's interesting because once we heard of the remains of the Pinaka, the destroyed bow, it was sort of
Mhm.
just taken off the entire story. There's no mention of it whatsoever in the entire story.
Correct. And this bow also disappears. This is a powerful weapon, yet there is no
Hmm.
mention of it. But I'm under the impression there could be mentions of weapons, maybe in Mahabharata or maybe in the upcoming sagas, there could be mention of these weapons. But for now, I couldn't find any. But I understand that you have a knowledge of these weapons. Like what are the weapons used? And could you care to share some of those?
Yeah, definitely. So let's start off with the most famous one, the Brahmastra, the ultimate weapon in order to end all of the conflicts, all of the wars. Brahmastra is sort of like it can only be used once in a lifetime. If you look at it in perspective of the user who's letting go of the Brahmastra, once you draw the weapon, there's no setting it down. You have to divert it somewhere, or you have to hit the target with it. And once it's summoned, there's no going back. It has to be released from the bow or from the source. And once it's enchanted, that's it. That's done. It is theoretically said that it has the power to wipe the entire world, as in the entire Bhuloka. Do mind that I'm not saying Earth at this point, I'm saying Bhuloka. This entire dimension, it has the power to wipe out the entire dimension. That's how powerful that weapon is. And Rama also had this weapon. He wielded this particular weapon. And at one point, we also see Rama drawing out this weapon. And it's said that in at one point I did read that Rama used the Brahmastra against the sea. The when they had to cross the sea in order to get to Lanka, Ravan's Lanka. That's when Rama decided to draw out his Brahmastra because the ocean was not being kind to him and his entire army. It was really rampant. And at that point, Rama decided to draw out the Brahmastra and threatened to dry out the entire oceans if the god of the oceans did not let them pass through. And that's when the god of the ocean just sort of made way for them, and then we see the entire story being carried out. So that's one place where the Brahmastra is mentioned within the Ramayana. And also there are multiple other weapons like the Trishul wielded by Lord Shiva and the famous Pinaka that we discussed about just now. And one thing that I've noticed is many of these weapons, they are elements of the nature just weaponized, as in there's the Jalastra, there's the Varunastra, ultimately weapons, ultimate elements of nature. Adityastra being one of the most famous ones. The Suryastra is also known as the Adityastra. Aditya is just another name for Suryadev, and that is also used by multiple people. And the Sudarshan Chakra, of course, symbolizing the rotation of the wheel of time by Lord Krishna himself. And there is the Anjalikastra that has been used by Lakshmana in the Ramayana, and it has been used in order to kill Karna as well in the Mahabharata. So Lakshmana used it, Rama's brother used it to kill Indrajit, who is the son of Ravan, and it was also used to kill Karna. Arjuna used it to kill Karna. The Anjali Kastra. That's
So
the name
wait,
of the weapon.
question: what was the name of the both word which Lord Rama as well as Lord Lakshmana used? What was the name of the weapons? Both of them. Do they have a name? Because I'm under the impression all of these bows, including the one in Mahabharata, have a name.
Yeah, I think if I remember it correctly, Rama's bow was Sharanga. Uh, I might be spelling it out wrong. I think it's spelled out as Sharanga, Sharanga.
Okay.
And also Lakshman, I'm not recalling Lakshmana's bow's name. I don't think I know it. Uh, there's also one Vijaya. The bow's name is Vijaya, but I'm not really
Hmm.
sure if it's Lakshmana's bow per se. Yeah, it's Lakshmana's bro. Vijaya is named as Lakshmana's bow.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah, Vijay Dhanush. But yeah, don't quote me on that. I'm not really sure about that.
Got it.
Yeah. So Sharanga is the name of Rama's bow. So yeah, that's the main weapon that was used in order to assassinate Ravan.
Strong as a bow. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And one thing about all of these weapons, if you notice it, all of these weapons, they're just all summoned by the use of a mantra. You can look at it in a way that they are um, sort of voice activated, more not completely voice activated, but you can see that the pronunciation of certain hymns activate these weapons. So you can just see the scientific advancement at that point of time, and all of these weapons that we're talking about, they were used to kill so many great beings at that point. And also the suryas that we just talked about right now, it is shaped in sort of two lines and three circles on top. It's hard to explain, but these circles are basically loops. And the role of the Suryastra is basically to emit light onto the entire universe, and it can recreate the entire power of the sun. As in, imagine the entire power, the heat of the sun, the flares of the sun onto a single weapon within your hand. That was the power of the Anjalikastra. I'm sorry, the Adityastra that was used multiple
So
times.
there is
And yeah.
sorry, there is this is my understanding again. I think I've read somewhere which says that uh, all the astras which are named after a certain deity, they have their own
Hmm.
presiding deity, and with
Hmm.
the blessings of the deity is when these weapons are at the fullest. They work at the fullest though. You can acquire these weapons without the blessing of the deities, but they would not be that helpful, or they would not be very functional, or the full potential would not be out. Essentially what we're talking about is company manufacturing product versus one made in black market, or China product kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? But
Yeah.
you have any thoughts on those things?
Yeah, exactly. These weapons carrying the premise that they are governed by a particular element of nature that is governed by a particular deity. So, for example, if you take into account the Suryastra, it is governed by the sun god. And without the blessings of the sun god, you'll not be able to use the power of the sun within your hand. So, that's a way of
Wait, are you
putting
quoting
logic
the
to it.
Spider-Man 2 dialogue?
Kind of.
Famous dialogue, the power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Oh, damn! That was the dialogue used by Doc Ock, right?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
one of my favorite dialogues. So I think let's slightly deviating from Ramayana. First two Spider-Man movies were kind of cool though, and they had really cool
yeah,
dialogues. That's one of my
yeah.
favorite dialogues,
Spider-Man
which you just said right now.
2. The power of the sun in the palm of my hand.
Yes, sir.
Iconic. Anyway, getting back to the topic. So it wouldn't really be possible if you didn't have the blessings of the deity that you're using the weapon of. It only makes sense that you only get the weapon from the deity through mental sacrifices and mental meditations that are being made. Of course, most of these weapons that have been granted to the devotees, they have been acquired only through meditation, the means of meditation and impressing the god that they want the weapon from. And or most of these weapons, even the Adityastra that was used to kill Karna, that was granted by the sun god Surya Dev to Arjuna in order to defeat Karna. So that had a specific purpose of its own, and it was supposed to be used for that specific purpose. If it was to be used for another purpose, which it was not meant to be, of course, it wouldn't have the blessings of the god that was presiding that weapon, and it wouldn't work as effectively. And most of these weapons, they can only be used once in a lifetime. For example, the Brahmastra, one person, one lifetime. That's the max that it can go towards, and it
Oh,
cannot be used
sorry,
one more time.
my bad.
Yeah.
I never knew this one. So Brahmastra can only be used once by one person in one lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. It can only be used once, and once it's drawn out, it cannot be taken back. It has to be launched somewhere, and it has to cause damage. It has to wreak havoc, and that's the entire concept of the Brahmastra. And whatever it touches, whatever it is being aimed at, whatever picture is being drawn within the mind of the person who draws the weapon, it's gonna destroy that entirely. And it does
Except
not
Lord
even matter.
Hanuman,
Except Lord Hanuman. That's the only exception because he had the boon from all of these
the
different
manufacturer.
deities, his Ashtrasiddhis. Yeah,
Yeah, the manufacturer said like my company products won't hurt you, right?
exactly. Immunity towards these products.
But speaking of which, so Indrajit was the one who launched Brahmastra at Hanuman, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he was
So
unable to effect do
use it
any
later
effect
on.
of any sort. Yeah,
Correct. Now I understand like why didn't he use Brahmastra? I think in the later part he never uses Brahmastra after that. He uses
yeah,
Nagastra but not Brahmastra. So that's the reason
yeah.
that he could only use it once and he used it on Hanuman and he was disappointed. That's waste of a good weapon.
The ultimate weapon that was ultimately
The
wasted by
ultimate
him.
weapon.
Yeah. It does not even matter if the person who is drawing the weapon imagines the entire world on fire. The Brahmastra is gonna achieve that same thing for the person who is drawing it. That's how powerful it was. And we being such primitive beings, we are the most amount of power that we're able to gather today is just of a nuclear weapon. Imagine the power that these weapons held and the power that these weapons held were derived from nature itself, as in literal elements of nature. Pashupatastra, the Varunastra, the Jalastra, all of these are just elements of nature. And you might also ask the question, what effect did these have? These weapons have such advanced scientific technology that it almost seems like magic to us. And these had all sorts of physical effects and psychedelic effects and mental effects. And at one point, I think Rama uses a weapon where the entire Ravana army imagines that the soldier that's accompanying them side by side is Rama, and their entire mind gets bent out of shape, and they end up destroying themselves. And this also worked on Ravana, and this was the point where even Ravana was stunned for a moment, but he could not completely shake that weapon off. He just there's one verse that describes this entire scenario. But then when Ravana uses this weapon, Rama is it basically has no effect on Rama because Rama has such advanced mental control that he's not like Ravana having 10 heads and all these 10 heads have enhanced sense. So this is one instance where you see the psychedelic effects that these weapons have. And also one more thing that I wanted to discuss, you can have the question, if there were so many advanced weaponry at that point of time in an ancient India where even we had not evolved, as in we the modern human had not been born yet, as in I'm talking about relating this to the Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, wherein he says that the modern human was born 40,000 years ago, but then we see all of these weapons, it basically seems like magic to us. You might pose the question, why don't these weapons exist today after such a great war, even after the Kurukshetra war, wherein in one place it is said that it is 4 million soldiers who died, And in another place, it says that 160 million soldiers died at that point. There's a massive depletion within the male population. It's hard for this kind of ancient knowledge to evolve at such a rapid pace, even after so many people died in one particular war. And out of the entire Kurukshetra war, it might be shocking to you, but only 12 people survived out of the 4 million. Let's take the lower number, for example. 4 million soldiers participated in that war. Out of those 4 million soldiers, only 12 people survived, out of which 9 of those people were Pandavas and only 3 of them were Kauravas. And one of the Kauravas being the person who has the gem on his head. I forgot his name.
Abhimanyu? No,
Yeah,
that's not Abhimanyu.
Abhimanyu.
No,
Oh, no,
Abhimanyu was the one who,
uh,
what's his name?
Ashwatthama.
Ashwatthama. I watched this
Ashwatthama
video.
was
Some lady says Ashwagandha. And when I got for a second, I thought Ashwagandha. But Ashwatthama, sorry.
yeah, Abhimanyu is the one who went into the Chakravyuh and never came out.
Yeah, yeah,
He was the
Abhimanyu
young
was.
young person. Yeah. So
Mahabharata is
some
equally interesting too.
yeah, definitely. So many interesting plot points. And
Yes, sir.
yeah, so many people died at that point, and you start wondering to yourself, the people who are left over with that knowledge, did they even trust that after such a great war, after such a great genocide that happened in the Kurukshetra war, are humans even capable of handling such ancient knowledge? And that might be one way of thinking, wherein all of these people who had such elevated knowledge just decided not to pass on this knowledge anymore, and only to pass it on to people who actually deserve it. And us, being the primitive humans that we are, we can't even come to agree upon one particular religion and one rule. How can we even be able to handle such great knowledge, such great power? Again, quoting Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility.
Another great
They sort
dialogue.
of they sort of understood that, and that might be one reason why it was never passed down amongst generations. And yeah, that's one way of looking as to why we don't have any knowledge of the Vimanas. And there's also depictions of people in spacesuits, literal spacesuits, sitting in Vimanas, and there sort of these symbolisms that have taken place throughout the Vedic times, and they just deemed us unworthy of this knowledge, and they never decided to pass it on to us. So that can be one way of looking at it.
Yes, sir. And even when you talk about Lord Vishnu and Shiva and the conflicts within the sects or even the story, one thing people fail to understand is, like you mentioned earlier, right? Parashurama was a devotee of Lord Shiva, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
Vishnu was, in fact, a devotee of Lord Shiva. And on the other side, you have Shiva, Hanuman,
Mhm,
who's an incarnation Lord Shiva, who's a devotee of Vishnu,
mhm.
right? And there's
Yeah,
also, I think there's another Purana which I was reading. I think this was Vishnu. Vishnu is the one known as lotus side. So Shiva was
yeah.
in meditation, and Vishnu wanted his blessing or something of that, some boon that he was looking for from Shiva. But he had to
Mhm.
place, I think, 1,000 lotuses, but then he was short of one, so he plucked out his eye and placed it, and Shiva was pleased, right?
Yeah.
So the devotion which you see is back and forth. It's like there, no one's saying that one is superior to another, right?
Mhm,
In other words, what they're saying is both are the same, and
mhm.
for an untrained mind, you'll only see the difference, but for a trained mind, like a qualified mind, you don't see the difference.
Yeah, you all see ultimately it becomes a part of the super soul that we're worshipping. It doesn't matter if you worship Shiva, if you worship Vishnu, or if you worship Brahma or any other deity. It ultimately, the prayer goes to the supreme soul that's sitting at the origin of the universe, in the causality of ocean. At the ocean of causality, there's one supreme soul that's sitting over there, and all of our prayers just go to that particular entity. And all of this rivalry between the Shaivites and the Vaishnavites, wherein they say that no, Shiva is a devotee of Vishnu, and then the Vaishnavites say that no, Shiva is a deity of Vishnu, and the Shaivites saying that Vishnu is a deity of Shiva. Each of us just imposing supremacy upon the other. It just tells you how unevolved we are, as a human society, and we're just fighting on such silly matters that one god is greater than the other instead of worshiping the supreme soul that we all came out of. We're just fighting amongst who's greater and who's lesser. That just signifies how unevolved we are.
Yes, sir. You mentioned about the astras. I think astras are one interesting topic because as a kid, when I heard about astras, each astra has its own significance. Like you mentioned about Brahmastras. My
Yeah,
understanding of Nagastra, I think Nagastra was used against Arjuna in
yeah,
Mahabharata, when Krishna had
yeah,
saved him. But he also got the mother Kunti to get another boon saying that you won't use Nagastra twice because Nagastra essentially it's like a target lock system, right? If you're
yeah.
aiming at it, it will never miss its target. Another famous
Exactly.
one is Pashupatastra, which is something which is maintained by Lord Shiva. Like
Yeah,
you mentioned about Shiva's weapons too. I have
yeah.
four displayed on the screen. Pashupatastra is one of those astras, which is the
Mhm.
presiding deity over here would be Lord Shiva himself. How powerful
Yeah,
is this weapon?
yeah. So Pashupatas, let's break down the weapon. Pashupati is essentially Shiva. Pashu meaning animal, Pati meaning the person who is above all, as in the supreme one. The person who is governing the nature, the person who is dear to all animals, and the person who is governing this weapon. Pashupati Astra. Shiva himself, he putting his how do I put this? His essence into weapon is Pashupatastra, and it is known to be so potent that a single touch of that weapon can just turn you into ashes. Uh, Similarly, how Shiva is known as the destroyer, his essence within weapon also carries the same qualities, wherein within a single touch it can be melted into ashes. So that's kind of a breakdown of Pashupatastra.
Right, so this is yeah, another dangerous weapon. One of the dangerous astras is where he has Trishul, which everybody knows what a Trishul is, right?
Yeah,
And we mentioned about the Pinaka bow, which was initially the one which was broken by Vishnu, and this
hmm,
Damru. I believe the Damru is the creation itself, right? That's the sound of creation and destruction. Again, depending on who you
yeah,
talk to, I think the
yeah,
Damru is the first thing that brought in. Creation, or some also says Damru is the one that would destroy everything. So depending on who you speak to, you could have variations there. But Vishnu also
yeah,
has his own weapons, right? He is got no less weapons, right? It's
yeah,
funny because I like the weapon because each god uh, is like the collection. They have their own set of weapons which the other god does not use, or it's not like a regular magic or anything of that sort. They
yeah,
specifically highlight the weapons and the significance of those weapons, right, which is only
yeah.
limited to them. So Vishnu's weapons.
Mhm.
So yeah, would you want to take over the Sudarshana Chakra?
Yeah, exactly. The Sudarshana Chakra being the most famous one that Vishnu slash Krishna yields, it signifies. There's one way of looking at it wherein it signifies the wheel of time, where one yuga when it's on top, it has to go down. What comes up has to go down, and what's down has to come up. Wherein it also signifies one more theory where it says that time is cyclical in nature. What has happened 1,000 years ago is going to happen again after 1,000 years, and so on and so forth. And also, this wheel of time destroys everything in its path. It does not matter who you are or where you are from. Time is going to destroy you forever, and that's one way of looking at it, saying that time being the presiding being overall. Uh, it destroys everything in its path, and it's said to be an incredibly powerful weapon. And it was also used to cut off Shishupala's head. The famous story where Krishna gives 99 opportunities of saying a bad thing about Krishna, and then the 100th time he's gonna cut off his head. The Sudarshan Chakra is said to be used in that instance. Of course, there are other versions of the story where um, other things happen as well. But yeah, the primary one is where Krishna releases his Sudarshan Chakra in order to cut off Shishupala's head after 99 sins. And the next one, the Kaumodaki maze. The Kaumodaki maze is sort of used like a shield. Um, you can look at it as a shield that is really heavy, and it's carried in the palm of Vishnu's hand. There's not much description of this in the Puranas, but wherever you see a photo of Vishnu, there's this mace being carried in one hand, and there's the Sudarshan Chakra being carried in the other hand. So there's one more way of looking at it, wherein nobody can stand against time, the wheel of time, aka the Sudarshan Chakra, and there's only one person who can protect you from it. That's Vishnu through his mace in the form of a shield. So that's one way of looking at it. And there's also the Panchajanya conch shell, which was used in the Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra war. This is the iconic conch shell that was blown by Krishna. It was the first conch shell that was ever blown in that entire war, and
Mhm.
there's not much description of it except that it said that it's a white conch shell, and the rings from that conch shell was heard throughout the universe. It was so great, the noise was so loud that the rings of the conch shell was heard throughout the entire universe. And that's basically a short description of what it is. And the Sharanga bow, like I said earlier, the Sharanga bow was used by Lord Rama in his conquest against Ravana. And the speciality of that bow, you hear the expression Ramban. Ramban is basically signifying that whatever is launched from that weapon, it never misses. It never has missed, it never will miss. And that's where the famous expression of Ramban comes from. So this is a brief description of all of these weapons.
Nice. This is, I think that's the bow which was quite famous, and
Yeah,
I think that's a bow which defeated Ravana as well, right?
yeah,
So the initial class when we mentioned about Vishnu and Shiva's battle as well, we are talking about the one which we noticed earlier, right? Which is
yeah,
regarding the two bows in
yeah.
question. That was the fight. I've never come across any other battles between them, right? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I've lost that information. But for now, to my knowledge, to my understanding, that's the only
Mhm,
battle or only argument between them, because whatever books I've read, it, for
mhm.
example, let's talk about when Shiva was not invited for Sati's father's initial celebration. What was that celebration that he was not part of, which was a
The
sign of,
Mahayajna.
correct, it was kind of rude. But when Shiva came in
Yeah.
and when he did what he had to do, the other gods did
Mhm,
not even have a problem. They even, including Vishnu, they all packed up and they
mhm.
left,
Yeah,
right? Because there was no
exactly.
conflict there. There is nowhere I've seen that there says there were conflicts. If because Vishnu was invited for that event, right? Vishnu could also be
Yeah,
like, hey, let me also intervene, but no, that was a
yeah.
respect for that. But I don't see any other battles between them. But I could be wrong. Do you have anything that says otherwise? Have you come across any other battles between the two main gods of Hindu pantheon?
Yeah, it's really not as far as a battle that goes, as in there's no real battle between Vishnu and Shiva. Of course, they're a part of the same supreme soul that I told about earlier, the Paramatma. There's no real battle between who's stronger and who's weaker. But now that you've mentioned the whole scenario of Sati's father, uh, Prajapati Daksh, conducting the Mahayagna, and he invited all of the gods except for Shiva. The disrespect that he showed towards Shiva, and it was not that Shiva came down. Shiva came down towards Prajapati Daksh's yagna. Shiva could not even care less whether he was invited or not. But the fact that Prajapati Daksh ended up insulting his own daughter Sati in that process is where Shiva got angry and he had to come down. And at that point, unable to bear all of this embarrassment when Prajapati Daksh said rude things about Shiva and how he's not a proper sage, and he insulted Shiva in multiple ways. That's when Sati got angry and unable to bear that embarrassment. It is said that she ended up entering Agni, the fire that was reserved for the Mahayagna. She ended up entering and she ended up sacrificing her life. That is when Mahadev, the Shiva ended up getting angry, and he decided to come down to the yagna, and that's when Prajapati Daksh was beheaded at that time. And I'm gonna get to where Vishnu and Shiva face off. Just to give a context, I'm saying all of this. So. Um, Sati being burnt down to the ground, Sati's burnt body lying there on the ground. Shiva says that, and Shiva sees that, and he's agonized by the pain of losing a loved one. For the first time in his life, he has someone whom he loves, and he marries that person, and this happens to that person. The person just ends up sacrificing themselves to fire, and that's when Shiva starts forgetting about his duty. Shiva being the destroyer of the universe, he's supposed to get rid of things that are not supposed to be at that place or time. He's supposed to be the destroyer of evil, and he's the one maintaining balance amongst the three Dev, the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Mahesh. Vishnu being the maintainer of the universe, Brahma being the creator of the universe, and Shiva being the destroyer of the universe. To maintain this balance, destruction is necessary so that new things can be born. When Sati sacrificed herself, Shiva ended up forgetting his duties as the destroyer of the universe, and that's when Vishnu had to sort of go against Shiva, and he had to unleash his Sudarshan Chakra, where when Shiva was carrying the burnt body of Sati throughout the universe, seeking for someone to help him to bring her back to life, he was sort of ignoring all of his duties, and that's when the Sudarshan Chakra was released, and today we know that as the 108 pieces that were, yeah, the Shakti Pitas that are being established, the 108 pieces of Sati's body, fallen all over the surface of Bhuloka. That's what we worship as Shakti Pitas today, and yeah, that's sort of the only instance where Vishnu had to go against Shiva in order to make him realize of his duties. To snap him out of his emotions and to make him realize of his duties and responsibilities as the destroyer of the universe, and to bring balance back to the entire living entity. So that's the only instance where he had to go against Shiva.
Yep, I agree. So if I understood correctly, if you look at the all the boons given versus all the punishments taken, it's never
Hmm.
the same God. If Shiva gives a boon, and Vishnu will
Hmm.
have taken avatar to destroy the person. If Brahma
Yeah,
gives a boon, then she will have to destroy that person. If they all three have given a boon, then the female goddesses, they will have
Shakti.
to take a form and kill the Shakti would have to take a
Yeah.
form and kill them. So it's always like each one doing whatever they're doing. They know the
Hmm.
consequence. It doesn't have to be from them. And in other words, they know what is about to happen and they know exactly
Hmm.
where the checkmate is for them as well. Like that's exactly
Exactly.
how all the boons have worked. So in other words, they all are in unison, right? And
Yeah.
you can't, even though we say that they go to, even though the scripture says they go to this particular deity post that, uh,
Yeah.
the story is very similar to what throughout. It's already pre-planned kind of thing. They know exactly what's about to happen, and then they just
Mhm.
prepared and they're okay with what it's because how it's transpired has already been decided.
Yeah, exactly. This is all a part of the Ras Leela of the entire material universe. It's all predetermined as to what's supposed to happen, when it's supposed to happen, and the Supreme Soul already knows about this, but he's supposed to let this happen because it is necessary for the universe. It is necessary to sort of carry on the universe. The birth of good and the birth of evil should happen at the same time, and the destruction of evil has to happen at the same time, at the cost of being the good that suffers at the end of the day. Some good is being destroyed in order to set up for the bigger evil that is to be destroyed further on. So that's sort of like the entire how the entire story goes, with each of these demons gaining a boon, and each of these gods taking an incarnation to destroy those demons. And all of these boons, all of them have some sort of a loophole within them, some sort of a gap in them, wherein the god is going to use that gap in order to destroy them. So that's how the entire story always goes.
Nice. I think we've uncovered some valuable information out of the Ramayana, especially just the few sarkas that we looked into. Right? We've just looked into 73 to 76, and we've
Yeah,
uncovered a lot from weapons, from the people, the stories, the backstories, so many things. Right? And that's good info that we've got so far.
yeah,
Maybe for the next week we could have something else planned
yeah,
and we could do it. So I think at this point we have come to the end of the session. Would you
yeah.
want to, do you want to share something as closing speech?
Uh, I mean, there's so much to be uncovered within all of this. Even though we have done 3 podcasts, there's so much left. We have not even scratched the surface yet, and there's so much more to be said in regards to whether it can be Ramayana or whether it can be Mahabharata or the Kalki Puran, the Garud Puran. So many other things that we can cover. It's just a gold mine of knowledge.
All right. So yeah, that's good. So if yeah, there are so many things we just skipped a lot of sargas and we moved. So there is several descriptions within the first half of the not in the first half, the first part of the Balakanda book itself, which we yet
Yeah,
to conclude as well. At some point we could revise those things.
yeah, definitely. We can just take care of that in the next podcast. We can just go through the phases of the Ramayana, and let's see how it goes. We'll just go with the flow, and we'll see how it goes.
Yes, that sounds
There's so
interesting. I
much.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, we've covered Balakanda. There's still, I think, there's some more of it still left of Balakanda. And then next is the most interesting topic. If I'm not mistaken, Ayodhya. Sorry, I think Ayodhya Kanda is the area, the topic where we talk about we discuss politics, as in whatever politics happens within the kingdom, right? With Kaikeyi and people influencing her, just like how we all have someone either pushing us in a positive direction or negative direction. We all have evil people around us or good
yeah,
people around us, depending on your circle is, right. And some people
yeah.
might push us in terms of enlightening ourselves to type of something bigger, and some are
Mhm.
there only to convince us, coerce us into doing something which you're not supposed to do as well. And that's where
Yeah,
the politics comes in, and that would be interesting to discuss as well. Maybe we could at some point dwell deep into those and see what we can uncover from that.
yeah, definitely. That can be an interesting topic to cover.
Yes, sir. So I think we've had a good discussion today, and we've covered interesting topics. I hope I hope others also find it interesting, and
Yeah.
yes, probably come up with something better, something interesting next week too. So that
Hmm.
should be it, I guess. So in that
Yes,
case, we
sir.
could end
Definitely.
the session as of now.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. I think it's a good point to end. And yeah,
All right, then. Thanks for joining, and if anyone else is watching, thank you for staying until the end, and have a nice day ahead or evening ahead. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.